When it comes to character animation, in Adobe Animate, we have a utility that allows us to move forward quite a bit by doing very few changes on an asset. This tool is called the AssetWarp tool. The AssetWarp tool works by creating a mesh on a shape, drawing object, or a bitmap, and allowing us to manipulate that mesh in order to deform the underlying visual, the underlying graphic, or the underlying pixels. Once again, this works only with shapes, drawing objects, and bitmaps. It is very important that you remember that because it doesn't work with symbols or with groups. So you need to make sure that your object is either a shape, a drawing object, or a bitmap. So with this in mind, what I want to do is I want to go to my library and I want to move this bitmap that I created before of a little green caterpillar to place it on the stem of that plant. So I'll just go ahead and grab that, and this is just a straight out image. There's no magic on this. So what I want to do is I want to create a new layer. I'm going to call it caterpillar. And I want to drop that image onto the stage. Now, I just want this caterpillar to take a step. I just want to move it forward down stem. And what I want to do in order to do this is I want to make use of that AssetWarp tool, the pin tool. Now, if you don't see that pin tool in your tools box, what you want to do is go to the little three dots at the bottom of the toolbox, click it open, and you would see it right here. Now, what you want to do is click on that and drag it onto your toolbox so that it stays outside, and then close your toolbox again, and you will have access to it. Now, remember, this works with shapes, drawing objects, and bitmaps only. Okay, so in this case, we're working with a bitmap. This bitmap I created from a drawing that I brought in from Illustrator, something that I had created before. And so I just literally just worked it out as a bitmap. That was the fastest thing to do. And it behaves as such. This bitmap has transparency on it. So the program basically is treating it as a PNG with transparency. So it's a PNG with transparency. That's the way it reads it, but it is a bitmap as far as the program is concerned. So with this done, what I want to do is I want to define how I want that visual to morph, how I want it to change. That's where the pin tool comes in. As soon as I select the pin tool and click on my bitmap, I will be pinning that area of the object, much like the puppet tool in After Effects or in the pin tool in Illustrator. So if I click here, what's going to happen is the program is going to look at the live area being the area that you actually see, not the transparency. And it's going to create a mesh on top of it, and it's going to map those pixels, that pixel information from the image onto that mesh. And then what we are morphing is actually the mesh. Now, with this in mind, there are two types of pins that you can work with. There are fixed pins and open pins. So to see what the differences are, let's go to the properties panel, and I'm going to select the pin tool. Then I'm going to click around the neck once. You'll notice that it created a mesh for me. And then I'm going to create another pin right here, another one in the middle, another one here, and one here. Okay, so let's take a look at the warp options under the object properties. You'll notice that it allows us to show the mesh or hide it. So if I prefer to work showing the mesh, and the reason for that is because I know this is parallel to the way bitmaps are mapped onto 3D objects in Maya or in 3ds Max. So if you have worked with those programs, you'll know that you want density of triangles to be a specific number. You don't want too many triangles. You don't want too few triangles either. The less triangles that you have around the pins, the more flexibility you're going to have for changing things, but the more likely that basically this pin affects anything in this area and interlocks with whatever is being affected by the second pin. What that means is that sometimes those triangles can overlap each other. Therefore, the underlying pixel information will look like it's being cut off, and that's what you want to avoid. That's one thing. The second thing is, so for that, I need to see the mesh. The second thing that I wanted to talk about was the handle modes, these little pins. With the type of pins that we have include both fixed and open. Open pins give you more triangular information around that particular pin. Fixed pins, however, allow you'll notice that the triangles changed around that area, but it gives you an extra tool, and this extra tool allows you to rotate the geometry around that specific area. But you will notice right away that when I rotated it, you get this distortion around the area because you lost triangles in that specific area. Therefore, you have less information to work with. So you have to be careful. You have to sort of, it's a trial and error thing, because for every image, the geometry and the pixel information will be different. So you play around until you find what you're looking for or what you like. In this case, I want to maintain that one as such because I want to rotate the head. I want to maintain the head pretty much looking as is right now. The other pins I'm going to keep as open. So now, how do we animate this? Keep in mind, this is not an object. Once again, this can only be done with shapes, drawing objects, or bitmaps. This is not a symbol. This is not a symbol. This is not a movie clip. It's not a graphic. It literally is an image that I imported and put onto the stage. So now, what do we do? I am going downstream on my timeline, and I'm going to create another keyframe at frame 10. In this keyframe, I will go ahead and start making transformations to the pins themselves. I'm going to be moving them. And for the front one, I am going to rotate it back to its regular position and perhaps move it just a bit forward, just a tad, just to create more animation there. This one I want to move forward a little bit as well. And you'll see that there's some deformation happening on this end right here. You see how my pixels get pulled. And that's because of the information between this pin and that pin. So this is what I mean by you need to basically play around until you find a happy medium for what you're working with, for whatever, you know, the asset that you're working with. It's all different per image. So let's say that that's good. Then let's go to the frame 20, press F6 on the keyboard to add another keyframe, and then I'll go ahead and move my first pin forward, move this, rotate it slightly up, move this pin this way, move this pin down, move this pin down and forward, forward, and forward. So now I have created, let me rotate this guy back again down. So I have created three stages for that animation: the beginning, the middle point, the end point. So how do I create that animation? Just like we did with the other animations. This is where it might be a bit confusing. It works with classic tweening. So if I highlight this tweening area and right click and choose create classic tween, it creates the tweening for me, and you will notice under the library it didn't create any extra information for me. Just because that is in the symbol, it automatically knows, because I tagged it with the AssetWarp tool, it knows that it has to treat it as something that I can animate this way. So it allows me to create that classic tweening, and what's going to happen now is going to add the actual tween frames to create the animation. So as you can see, it's creating the little step animation for my caterpillar. Now, I can, if let's say I have issues with my pixel information like this over here that's overlapping, you can always go back to the keyframe and select the keyframe. Selecting the keyframe on the timeline will automatically bring up the little pins, and you can go ahead and modify that keyframe. It will not break your animation. So you can go ahead and work around the details of the animation on a per frame basis, just like if it was a regular animation, and then you will notice that you do not basically damage what you had created before. So let's say I want that, I want that there. Let's see what that does. So that is how the AssetWarp tool works. Let me go ahead and hit play on that so we can see a preview of this. You do a quick render of this to see what it looks like. And you'll notice that it gives you a pretty organic, fairly fast animation, which can get you a long way. Now, this not only works, I started this demo by saying when it comes to character animation, but in reality, you don't have to be stuck with character animation only. If you, let's say, for example, you're working with prototyping and you want to create something that looks organic, a transformation between two objects, or the motion of something across the screen when you're working on an interface. this principles apply just the same. So just because the example we're looking at here is with a organic animation for a character, doesn't mean that that is the only use you have for it. So you can just keep on, you can use this as you see fit, whatever it fits best.